Compare these two versions. I waited for the bus when I realized I left my wallet, and I was waiting for the bus when I realized I had left my wallet at the hotel. The second sentence is clearer because each verb has a different timeline job. Listen again, then identify the event that actually changes the situation. I realized. The first useful contrast is background versus event. I was waiting at the gate when the airline changed our boarding time. Waiting was already in progress, so it uses past continuous. Say the sentence once, then answer which action forms the scene and which action moves the story forward.
I would describe the timeline like this. After I had arrived, I checked in and left my bags at reception. Had arrived marks an earlier completed step. So the real question is not which tense sounds more advanced. It is which tense tells the listener where each action belongs.
Now listen to one short clue. Then I realized I had left my charger on the train. Realized is the later discovery. Had left points to an action before that discovery. In connected speech, had may sound very light, but the timeline meaning remains. Repeat the full sentence, keeping realized and left clear, then ask yourself which event happened first. Past simple carries the main event that moves the story forward. Past continuous gives the background already in progress. Past perfect marks an earlier completed action before another past point. In I was waiting when I realized I had left my wallet, waiting is background, realized is the event, and had left is earlier past. Now test the background layer. Use the model while I was walking I saw. In the complete sentence, while I was walking through the old town, I saw a tiny bakery. The walking creates the scene and saw gives the event inside that scene. Repeat it once, then change bakery to another thing you might realistically notice while traveling.
For the earlier layer, I can use by the time we got there, the tour had already started. The arrival is the later reference point. The tour starting happened before it. Try the same structure with a museum, a train, or a restaurant. By the time you arrived, what had already happened?
Past simple normally carries a straightforward sequence. We arrived, checked in, left our bags, and walked to the river. Each action happens next, so simple past is enough. Compare that with we had just sat down when the waiter came. Had just becomes useful because one completed action is viewed from a later past moment. Build this one from meaning. I was about to leave when the hotel receptionist called my room. Was about to leave describes an intention at the edge of happening. Called is the event that interrupts it. Change one detail. Perhaps you were about to board, pay, or go downstairs when something happened. Consider, it had been raining all day, so we stayed inside until dinner. The rain began earlier and continued before the later decision, so had been raining explains the background cause. Notice that this is not the basic past perfect form, but the same timeline idea applies. Earlier ongoing situation first, later result second.
I can say, after I had arrived, I checked in, when I want to emphasize that arrival was complete before check-in. But if the order is already obvious, I arrived and checked in, is lighter and perfectly natural. Choose the version that matches how much timeline contrast the listener actually needs.
Now use a discovery pattern. Then I realized I had left my wallet. Realized is the new event. Had left explains the earlier mistake behind it. Compare it with then I realized I left my wallet. That shorter version may be understood, but past perfect makes the earlier before-later relationship much clearer in a teaching or careful storytelling context. You can now move the story forward and step back to an earlier cause. The next distinction is background. Use the freeze frame test. If you could freeze the story just before the main event and an action would still be happening, that action is a good candidate for past continuous. Listen to this timing contrast. By the time we got there, the tour had already started. The phrase by the time creates a later reference point, while had already started marks what was complete before that point. Let by the time we got there flow together, then give useful stress to tour, already, and started.
Here is the background event pattern in a clean travel example. We were looking for our platform when the departure board changed. We're looking gives the ongoing search. Changed is the shorter event that interrupts or updates the situation. Repeat the natural version, then replace platform with gate.
Transfer the same relationship to while. While I was walking back to the hotel, I found a small night market. While introduces the longer background activity, found is the event inside it. For example, Choose an ongoing travel activity such as waiting, driving, or exploring, and add one shorter thing you noticed or discovered. Now add the earlier past clue. Which is clearer? I realized I booked the room for the wrong night, or I realized I had booked the room for the wrong night. Say the stronger version. Then identify the later past reference point. It is the moment I realized the mistake. Try this sequence from memory. After we had checked in, we went out for dinner. Had checked in marks the completed earlier step, went out returns to the main story. A common mistake is after I arrived, I had checked in, which puts past perfect on the later action.
Here is a simpler two-layer example. While I was walking through the old town, I saw a great cafe. Walking was already happening, so it forms the background. Saw is the event that arrives inside that background. The point is not to make every sentence contain three tenses. Use only the layers your meaning needs.
Now combine all three layers. We were heading to the airport when I realized I had packed the wrong passport. We're heading is background, realized is the main event, and had packed is the earlier cause. Compare that with, we headed to the airport when I was realizing I packed the wrong passport. The weaker version mislabels the event roles. Past perfect solves an earlier before-later problem, but overusing it creates a new problem. For example, I had missed the shuttle, so I called a taxi, waited outside, and checked the map. Only the earlier event needs had. The later sequence moves forward naturally in simple past. Watch the timing in, we had just sat down when the waiter came. Had just sat down means the first action finished only moments before the second event. The word just narrows that gap. Use had just when the closeness of two past events is part of the story you want to tell.
Another useful storytelling chunk is, I was about to leave when she called. Was about to shows an intention that was almost becoming an action, called interrupts it. Then transfer the pattern. I was about to board when my phone rang. The structure is useful whenever an expected next action is interrupted.
Say this cause and result line. It had been raining all day, so we stayed inside. The earlier ongoing weather explains the later decision. Now change the result while keeping the cause. It had been raining all day, so we took a taxi. The grammar stays stable because the timeline relationship has not changed. Now retell a discovery at the station. When we reached the station, we discovered that the last train had already left. Reached and discovered move the story forward. Transfer that logic to another place. When you reached the museum, airport, or hotel, what did you discover had already happened? While we were waiting at the gate, the airline announced a 2-hour delay. In natural speech, we're maybe unstressed, but waiting carries clear stress. Hear the contrast between the soft helper and the strong content word. Then say the sentence once without making we're louder than waiting or announced.
I would explain the hotel problem like this. The hotel could not find my reservation because I had booked the room for the wrong night. The missing reservation is the later problem. Had booked identifies the earlier cause. Perhaps the airline could not find your seat because you had entered the wrong date, name, or booking reference.
For a clean chronological chain, past simple is still your default. We checked in, left our bags, and walked to the river. Those actions happen one after another, so past perfect would add unnecessary backward-looking meaning. Try another sequence. We bought tickets, found our platform, and boarded the train. Now hear the full 3-layer model. I was waiting for the bus when I realized I had left my wallet. Was waiting gives the background. Realized is the turning point. Had left marks the earlier mistake. Compare it with I waited for the bus when I realized I left my wallet. The weaker version loses the in-progress scene and leaves the earlier relationship less explicit. You can now hear the helpers and the strong event words, so switch to active retrieval. Before every answer, ask 3 questions. What was already happening? What happened next? What had happened before that? Use those answers to select past continuous, past simple, and past perfect. The connector can guide you, but chronology decides.
Choose the natural version. While I walked to the station, it was starting to rain. Or, while I was walking to the station, it started to rain. The second is better for this meaning. Say the corrected sentence. Then replace station with hotel while keeping the same background event relationship.
Repair this sentence. By the time we arrived, the train left. The clearer version is by the time we arrived, the train had left. Arrival is the later reference point, and the train's departure happened before it. In speech, had may be light, but do not remove the relationship it expresses. Now remove unnecessary past perfect from a simple chain. Instead of, we had arrived at the hotel, had checked in, had left our bags, and had gone out, say, we arrived at the hotel, checked in, left our bags, and went out. These are main events in chronological order. Listen carefully to this correction. I realized that I had the wrong ticket. Realized is a sudden mental event, so past simple is natural. Also notice that had the wrong ticket uses had for possession. It is not past perfect because there is no past participle after had.
Now solve the complete timeline again. I was waiting for the bus when I realized I had left my wallet at the hotel. Which action is background? Which event moves the story? Realized. Say the whole sentence. Then explain the three choices in your own words. If you can justify them, you are choosing from chronology rather than memory.
Try a fresh pair. I was waiting at the station when the screen changed. Waiting was in progress. Changed is the event. Add an earlier cause only if the meaning needs one. The screen changed because the train had been delayed. Do not force a third layer. Use this frame when you want to emphasize the earlier step. After I had collected my bag, I called a taxi. Had collected is complete before called. Then return to the main timeline. I called a taxi, went outside, and waited near the entrance. Here is the harder decision. Should a whole story use past perfect because everything happened in the past? No. If the sequence is simply we arrived, checked in, and went upstairs, past simple is enough. Use past perfect only when you need to look backward from a later past moment.
Now apply the discovery pattern independently. Then I realized I had left my passport in the room. Realized gives the later discovery, and had left gives the earlier cause. You can reuse the structure with wallet, charger, ticket, or camera, but keep the chronology consistent. Create your own sentence beginning, then I realized, and make the earlier mistake clear with had plus a past participle.
Build a two-layer sentence without looking at a formula. While I was walking near the harbor, I found a quiet cafe. Walking is the scene. Found is the event. You might say, while I was exploring the market, I noticed a bus stop. The goal is not to copy vocabulary, it is to preserve the background event structure. Now test by the time without a prompt. A strong answer is by the time we reached the gate, boarding had already ended. Reached gives the later reference point. Had already ended marks the earlier completed event. Then create a new version with a museum, restaurant, or train where something had already finished before you arrived. Use the close sequence pattern. We had just sat down when the announcement started. Had just sat down tells us the first action finished moments before the announcement. Compare it with we sat down and the announcement started, which gives a simple sequence, but less emphasis on timing. Now make one similar sentence with had just and when.
Transfer the interrupted intention pattern. I was about to leave when the driver called. Was about to leave describes the planned action at that moment. Called interrupts it. Now change both the intention and interruption. I was about to board when my phone rang. Your sentence should still make clear what was nearly happening and what occurred next.
How would you explain a later travel choice caused by earlier weather? One strong model is, it had been raining all morning, so we took a taxi. Had been raining gives the earlier continuing cause. Took gives the later result. Keep the first situation genuinely earlier, and let the second clause show the decision or outcome. Why not keep past perfect after I had arrived? Because had arrived has already established the earlier step. The next action becomes the main event. After I had arrived, I checked in. Then continue naturally. I unpacked and called home. Say all three actions. Final listening clue. Tense meaning survives even when small helper words become weak in natural speech. In I was waiting was as light and waiting carries more stress. In I had left, had may reduce strongly, while left remains clear. Do not delete the helper mentally just because it is quiet.
Here is a quick meaning check. Then I realized I had left my wallet. What happened first? Leaving the wallet. What happened later? The realization. That is why I had left points backward from realized. Say the sentence once, then change wallet to passport without changing the tense logic. If your listener can immediately reconstruct the order, the sentence is doing its job.
Recap the earlier past pattern with this line. By the time we got there, the tour had already started. By the time gives the later reference point and had already started marks what was complete before it. Do not use past perfect because the event feels important. Use it because the event is earlier relative to another past moment. Recap the background pattern. We were looking for our platform when the departure board changed. We're looking creates the ongoing scene. Changed moves the story forward. Keep were light and give clearer stress to looking, platform, board, and changed. Now swap in your own travel details while preserving the relationship. Put the system together in one final retell. Use past continuous for background, past simple for main events, and past perfect for a true earlier action. For example, while I was walking back, I found a market. Later, I realized I had left my charger at a cafe. Tell your 2-minute travel story and explain one tense choice using the timeline rules.